Thank you for tuning in to Tamara for Georgia. I am Tamara Johnson Shealey, your candidate for the United States Senate. I'm an independent Democrat that believes that reparations will make America great. It is time that we unite our country once and for all. Please go to my website. It's tamaraforgeorgia.com. And please join me every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here for Tamara for Georgia. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Tamara Johnson Shealey. Good morning. It is a sunny Saturday morning here in Georgia. The weather is a little frigid. I'm cold, but it is absolutely beautiful here in the great state of Georgia. So I am Tamara Johnson Shealey. And this morning, we're going to have conversations, our first of many series of the conversations with the candidates. We have candidates across this great state of Georgia who have put themselves out there to serve. And I tell you, this is a huge endeavor. And anybody that steps up to run, I am like cheering them on, because I can just tell you as a candidate myself and as someone who has run not one time, not two times, not three times, not four times. This is my fifth consecutive run for office. When I tell you, this is a tremendous undertaking, it is. So anybody that puts themselves out there to serve, I am a cheerleader, whoever you are, because I know what this costs and what this takes. So this morning, I am delighted to bring to you candidates from the Georgia State School Superintendent race. And our first guest this morning is Miss Curry Hitchens.
Hey, good morning, Tamara.
Good morning, Carrie. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It is a little bit chilly, you're right. But other than that,
it's chilly. I'm not, Georgia in March, we usually start to get like some spring fever. We're hot. Like we start to get like warm around here.
Always up and down in Georgia, but
yeah, it is. But you know what? I love spring here in Georgia, because you really have a real spring. It'll be cold, but then the weather starts to warm up and we all get excited. We get to be outside again. I love spring in Georgia.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And all the flowers and flowering trees are beautiful. Yeah.
So tell us, Curry, are you native Georgian? Like, tell us who you are. Let's start there.
I am from Northwest Georgia, Whitfield County, a small town called Tunnel Hill. Mm-hmm. And I grew up there and went to Whitfield County Public Schools. Both my parents were teachers, not always in Whitfield, kind of moving around. My mom taught mostly in Whitfield County. And I have an aunt and uncle who also taught in Whitfield County. And my uncle was a principal. And my cousin, who those are his parents, is still a teacher up in Northwest Georgia. So that's pretty exciting. So yeah, I am from Georgia, grew up in the public schools in Georgia, and then went to Atlanta to go to college, went to Agnes Scott for college, and UGA for my master's in education, and Emory for my law degree. So I love all the schools in Georgia. I got a few more to tick off, actually, if I'm going to I need a few more degrees so I can go to every school in Georgia. But yeah, I love it. And I've been an attorney at Georgia Legal Services and then Atlanta Legal Aid for a long time, doing a lot of education work, representing students in school discipline cases to try to fight and stop the school to prison pipeline, and in individualized education program cases for kids who have needs that need to be accommodated at schools. So I've had a really great experience doing that work. And that is what brought me to run. Basically, I wanted to do more for the students of Georgia and the teachers. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But that's a introduction. It's very nice to be here, Tamara. And I see that Mr. Morrow joined.
Mm-hmm. Good morning, Mr. James Morrow. Good morning.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
State School Superintendent. Welcome to the broadcast this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. You want to introduce yourself? We're just chatting. We'll start with the chatting before we dive into any of the specifics.
So you just want me to tell you about myself?
Yeah. Where are you from? Are you native Georgian?
Oh, no, I'm from Arkansas.
Arkansas.
I was born in West Helena, Arkansas.
Okay.
What brings you to Georgia? How long have you been here? Tell us.
Well, I'll break it down for you. All right. I started out teaching in Little Rock in 1997. I played basketball and ran track at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff from 93 to 97. And when I graduated, I became the assistant men's basketball coach at Philander Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas. And during that time, I worked on my master's in secondary education at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and I completed it in 1999. After the head basketball coach retired, that's when I realized that there was no job security in being a college basketball coach, because having the wind blows, then you can lose your job. So I started working for Little Rock School District, and I worked for them for approximately 3 years. And I was just tired of Arkansas, so I wanted something different. So I moved to Las Vegas, and I taught in Las Vegas from 2001 until 2006. And then I got tired of the desert. And I had a lot of friends that I went to college with that were educators out here in Georgia. So they encouraged me to come to Atlanta. And I started out at Sylvan Hills, which is a middle school in Atlanta Public Schools. I was the athletic director, head football, head basketball, head track coach. And a situation occurred there with an administrator and myself. And I ended up leaving and going to Clayton County schools, where I taught and coached at North Clayton, high and middle, and now I'm currently the head boys soccer coach and head girls flag football coach, and I also taught AP United States History, AP Human Geography, and Physical Education at Jonesboro High School in Clayton County. And one of the reasons I became a teacher, my mom, she was a teacher at my school. She was a PE teacher, and she was the head girls volleyball, head basketball, and head track coach. So, she encouraged and instilled a lot of discipline in me. And also my aunt, my father's sister, she was my business ed teacher. So she made sure I learned how to type in the 10th grade, because she was like, you're going to need that if you plan on going to college, in which it was a pretty good thing, because a lot of my teammates in college, they used to have to pay me to type their papers. And I used to charge like $2 to $3 a page, depending on how much I like you or not. My mom, she basically motivated and encouraged me to be in education. She's only the second Black lady in the history of Arkansas sports to be inducted in the Arkansas High School Coaches Hall of Fame. She was inducted in 2019. So, again, my mother, she was my motivation as far as me becoming a teacher and a coach.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So why you run? Because that was Curry answered on her own. She said why she ran. So why do you run?
I want to change what's going on in schools completely. I'm in the trenches. I'm on the front line. I see it daily. The schools are being taken over by students. You can basically find any type of drug. You can find guns, knives, kids popping pills. And I'll give you an example. One kid, I caught him smoking a blunt on Monday, then turned around and caught him having sex in the lobby of the main gym. He gets 1 day in-school suspension. I mean, and when you just allow that behavior to continue and there's no discipline, and by me being the regional director for the Association of Professional Educators, I hear a lot of horror stories about things that's going on all over the state. So it's just like, man, a lot of the people that create policy, they don't understand what's really going on, because they're not there and they don't see it. Like kids are so disrespectful. They tell you to shut the F up, get the F out of their face. One teacher, she came to me and she was like, a kid told me, he met her at her car and told her that I'm gonna follow you home, and I'm gonna break in your house and I'm gonna beat you up. And when she went to the administrator and told the administrator what the kid did, the administrator brushed it off. It was like, oh, he was just playing. But when kids say things like that to teachers, it needs to be taken seriously and something needs to be done to them. I'm not saying lock them up, but maybe a alternative school setting or a boot camp setting, something where it's going to instill and motivate discipline, because a lot of these kids, they don't have any father figures at home. Their mothers work graveyard shift, and the oldest sibling is basically forced to raise and take care of their little brothers and sisters. I see that all the time. My athletes will tell me, Coach, I can't come to practice today. My mom working the graveyard shift. I got to take care of my little brother and sister. So, basically these kids, they have adult problems. They're raising their siblings, and they're not being able to enjoy their childhood the way it should be meant to be.
So let me ask Carrie, do you think that the behavioral issues is one of the biggest challenges in our school system today? Do you think so as well? Okay, we don't have any sound.
Oh no.
There you go. You got it. There you go. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Definitely something. It's definitely an issue right now. I know there was an article recently saying that a lot of teachers have seen violence in their classrooms in the school buildings. But I think we have to look at it as a societal issue. It's not just a school issue. There's violence raising a rise in violence across the country in a lot of ways, on airplanes, like you are basically. I think it's probably all related in part to the pandemic, like what's happening during the pandemic and how kids were not used to being around other kids and adult figures and not having that authority in their life as much as they used to maybe before the pandemic happened and they were out of school for a long time. I think we need to look at getting everybody help. And if the kids are having these difficult mental health needs, then we need to meet them where they are and get them the services they need. We do have mental health services in Georgia. We need to strengthen them and get more of them. We need more counselors in schools. We need more mental health services in schools. It would be great if we could have clinics in schools that would help to support all the students and the teachers, of course, because I know a lot of them are also struggling with some of the same issues. They were also impacted for 2 years. We've all gone through basically a traumatic event for a couple of years, but not exactly together. We separated because of the pandemic, which is still going on, as we know. So it's still happening to these kids, and these kids who are watching their younger siblings, sometimes it's because their parents are finally working. Maybe they hadn't been for a while, and it's actually a good thing, I guess, in a way. At least they're getting to have income again, and their families are working again. But I think we need to help the kids, make sure they aren't kicked out of school, find a way to serve them and prevent things from happening. There's got to be a good way to get services in place in the schools, maybe restorative justice, maybe more Saturday school, like whatever it is going to keep the kids in the classroom, but support the teachers. Because teachers, I think, for one reason this is happening is we don't have enough teachers right now. We don't have enough substitute teachers. We basically are failing the teachers and not.
Yikes.
That's what froze up.
Froze.
Giving them the support they need instead of helping. I can still hear you guys. We're telling teachers that.
You're frozen again, Carrie. Oh gosh. Can you hear us?
I hear you.
Curry, can you hear us? I want her to finish her thought. Okay. If you can hear us, maybe log out and log back in, or come. Let me bring you down and then bring you back in. Go ahead, Mr. Morrow. You want to chime in on that? Because I saw where she kind of sees it in one dimension and you may see it in another. You want to chime in?
Notice how she said, as far as, it's a problem with society, but when adults do things in society, what happens to them? They get locked up. But like she said, we shouldn't lock the kids up. Me, myself, I was a 9-year-old third grader, and I did something, and I had a probation officer, in the third grade. I wasn't even 10 years old yet, and I had a probation officer. So I understand what Curry is saying, because, if I wasn't I did get 6 months probation, and I had to go check in with my probation officer, but, I was given an opportunity and a chance to do right, and after that situation, it kind of taught me a lesson, because the judge was like, if I see you within 6 months, I'm going to put you in kiddie jail. And I didn't know no such thing exists, with the orange jumpsuits and the orange flip-flops, for kids. I didn't know there was a such thing. So, if you can scare kids straight, then so be it. But a lot of times these kids, their parents encourage that behavior, and we need to get help, anger management classes, some type of male intervention for the students, because, I hate to see students, locked up and not given a second chance, because I was given a second chance for something that I did as a kid. So, I understand where Curry's coming from. But at the same time, if you're a habitual offender and like kids constantly telling teachers to shut the F up and get the F out of your face, and basically the administrator says don't do it no more, and they go back to class. But yet as a teacher, if you tell a kid to shut the F up, you're going to be suspended 30 days without pay. And a kid can hit you, but you can't hit them back. So I feel like teachers should be allowed to defend themselves if a kid jumps on them and basically threatens to cause bodily harm. But, that's not the situation. Teachers, they get the short end of the stick every time. A lot of people feel like it's strictly about the kids, and I agree it is. but to a certain extent, you got to understand discipline has to be there.
So let me ask you a question, because I want Carrie, since your mic is working, I want you to get some time in here.
I don't know what happened exactly. Like I told you, the internet's been kind of
choppy.
My house.
Yeah, no worries. Look, so let's stay. I kind of want to stay in this vein a little bit with the behavioral issues that are happening in the school. Do you think it's more of demographics, where, you know, Curry, you're in North Georgia. Mr. Morrow, are you more in the South or Metro?
I'm in the South. I'm in Jonesboro High. And before that, I was in Atlanta Public Schools. Yeah. And so
do you think it's a demographic issue with the way the behavioral issues themselves and the way the problems are addressed? Do you think that
it's the environment?
Let me let Carrie jump in. We want to give her some time, just in case her sound is going out.
I'm in Atlanta, actually. I grew up in Northwest Georgia, but I live in Atlanta now, and represent students in Atlanta Public Schools mostly, but also Fulton County and DeKalb counties, in Gwinnett County. I think we have a few in Clayton County, but maybe not right this minute. I have had a few clients there as well. But I think it's not just a demographic. I think, like I said, it's a societal issue right now. It's not just in schools. It's everywhere. Schools, because kids are mandated to be there. Teachers are not mandated. They could go somewhere else. But kids are mandated to be there. They have to be there, or their families will get into trouble. So they have to be there. We need to find a way to help them. They have to be there. That's why schools are good places to provide supports for kids. And that's why schools can be community centers for the families and for the whole community and the kids to be able to get what they need. It's not exactly something that's just in, certain areas in Georgia. It's happening across the state as well. But I do think I would agree, and maybe this is what Mr. Morrow was going to say, that it seems like the bigger schools are having more problems. And I think that's because the schools are so large that it's difficult to really know all the students and see anything that you might have seen earlier on to prevent a violence from coming, or to prevent, the bad language and the treatment that these students are giving to teachers. But I will say that kind of what Mr. Morrow is talking about, poor treatment to teachers and being disrespectful, is coming from somewhere. These students, I'm not saying their parents are teaching them. I'm saying I think they're struggling. This is a way for them to reach out. I mean, is it an appropriate way to reach out? No, but that's not how trauma works, right? These kids are probably traumatized, and this is them saying it in a way they don't understand even what's happening, that they need help. And maybe the teachers aren't equipped to help. But that's what I want to do, is I want to help teachers, and not just the teachers, but bring in people to help the teachers to actually equip these students so they can learn how to move past this trauma and how to deal with it. We should all be dealing with it together. We probably all need to have therapy, even if it's some kind of really big group therapy in schools, because we've gone through something large together and it hasn't stopped. It's still kind of happening. And the violence around them is pretty constant right now. That's what my understanding is. I do a lot of cases in which I represent students, because one other problem is that sometimes schools don't have the bandwidth to really dig into something that happens in their building. And instead of looking and seeing like what happened, they just kick out all the kids. I'm not saying what Mr. Morrow is saying. I'm not seeing them letting kids stay when something happens. Like, I have a student who was attacked at school. He was just in line for breakfast, and 10 kids walked in, and one of them hit him, and then another one hit him a little bit later. And he got expelled and sent to alternative school, although he was attacked, and I would say barely even defended himself. So I think sometimes that happens. So a lot of kids are just being thrown to the side when they didn't even actually do anything. And he should also have a right to defend himself, but didn't, because schools don't want to recognize that right. Although there is a right. Kids do have a right to defend themselves when they're attacked, or when they think they're going to be attacked at school. But that's not where I want it to get to. What I want to happen is for us to try to resolve issues before we get there. Try to teach students how to work through things together, how to problem solve, how to address each other and teachers, and give them more time doing that, not less time being able to work with each other. Like, when we kick them out of the school, they're going to come back eventually, but with less skills, because they're not getting that training and that help wherever they go, if they're in alternative school, or if they're expelled.
Mr. Morrow, you want to chime in? And then we have some questions. The audience wants to chime in, so I love audience interaction because they have questions. So go ahead, Mr. Morrow, and then we'll put some audience.
Well, back to what she was saying about, that the students defending themselves. A lot of times, if a student feels like a student is going to threaten them or do something, if they write a letter to the administrator and be like, well, little Johnny said he's going to jump me, and I feel like I have the right to defend myself, then a lot of times that kid won't get punished, but a lot of times kids don't know that they can do that. That's like a document where you've given this to your administrator that I feel threatened. That way, if a kid do jump you and you beat the brakes off of them, then nothing should happen to you. But back to the absences, like I've had students have 143, 200 absences, and they're still allowed to graduate. And right now with COVID, as Curry was saying, we're behind. We're like 2.5 years behind with this virtual thing, and a lot of times, kids were flunking, and the administrators would come to the teachers and be like, you need to show compassion. You need to have sympathy. And if a kid got like a 40, they would demand that we give them a 70 and push them on through. But it hasn't just started with COVID. It's always been like that. Even on the middle school level, teachers are forced to give students 50% just for putting their name on the paper. And when I ask what's the rationale behind that, well, when little Johnny decides to do some work, he won't be so far behind. But yet, I feel like we're setting these kids up for failure, because when they become adults in society, they're not going to get a full paycheck for doing half of the work. But it's like, I teach, when I taught AP classes, I had students that were reading, like they had a Lexile score of 400 and 500, which means they're reading on the 4th and 5th grade reading level, but they done made it all the way to 9th and 10th grade. That's a problem. And that's going to be a major problem when they become adults. And as far as like, a lot of kids don't get enough to eat. A lot of times, the only food they receive is when they get breakfast and lunch from school, and then they don't get any more food again until they come to school the next day, or unless a friend or a neighbor provides something for them. So, a lot of times teachers don't understand what kids are going through, because in their lifestyle, their parents provided for them and they never missed a meal. They had a nice, comfortable room, nice, clean bed. But a lot of these kids, it's 5 or 6 of them sharing one room with like 3 and 4 bunk beds piled up on each other. And they, like Curry said, they just feel frustrated. And they bring their frustrations to school and they take it out on the teachers based on what's going on with them at home. So, yeah, we need to do something about all of it. But it's like, what are people willing to do? What are they willing to sacrifice to fix it? That's the major question.
He says, what about funding to enable better systemic approaches? And Robert, I'm going to come to your question. I see you, Mr. Reed, in the chat. So what about funding to enable better systemic approaches?
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing.
Let's let Corey jump in.
I'm sorry.
That is definitely a problem in Georgia. And we know right now that the formula was made in like 1985 or 84. So before the digital age and before a lot of growth has happened and just a lot of changes in schools. So we need to look at that formula again and make it more equitable. There are some grants that are supposed to make things more equitable across the state. But I don't think they really go far enough. What we really need to do is look at that formula. It's based on property value in the areas where schools are, of course, which makes some areas be able to raise a lot of money because they don't have to use. There's a 5% property tax that schools have to do to get that money to fund the school systems. But some school systems, of course, their property owners can afford more than that, so they charge more than that, and those school systems have a lot of money the other school systems just don't have. So we need to make it more equitable in the state of Georgia and fully fund schools. I know recently the governor said that he was, fully funding schools, but that's not quite what really happened. What really happened was he put back into the schools the money that was there pre-pandemic. We cut off a lot of money. Our legislature cut off a lot of money to schools before the pandemic, and then we just put it back. But we can do more. We just had a huge influx of money from the American Rescue Plan. It's like a historic amount of money. I think 4.9 billion or something. I might have that a little bit wrong, but it's a lot of money. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's a lot of money, and that a lot of that money can go to exactly what we're talking about. Like it can go to getting services for kids in the classroom, to helping them be able to catch back up. Because I hear a lot about worrying about kids who lost learning during the pandemic, but I want to hear more about helping them to be okay and happy and healthy people, because if they're not in that position, they're not ready to learn. And just like, I think I saw someone ask about homelessness. I don't know in where Mr. Morrow lives, but I know we do have a lot of homelessness in Georgia and students, and a lot of people who are either maybe not homeless, but their housing is not stable. So these families have other concerns that come before school right now, which makes sense. They have to live first, right? But we need to help those families as much as we can as well by supporting programs that will give housing or help pay rent for folks who've been behind on rent because of the pandemic or other reasons. In other words, we need to support the whole community to be able to raise the children up so that they can learn, get all their needs met so that they can learn.
Mr. Morrow, the same question about funding. What about funding to enable better systemic approaches? And then Robert's question about homelessness. He said he wanted to ask you if homelessness has risen in your district.
All right, well, back to what Curry was saying about the Quality-Based Education Act. It was established in 1984, 85. I was in the 5th grade. I'm 47 now. So how can you continue to fund an education system that hasn't been revamped in all those years? There's over 2 million students in Georgia, and approximately each school receives about $6,000 per student. But then you have a lot of parents that are taking their students out of public school and placing them in charter schools, and that money goes to that school. But in addition, like my school, Jonesboro High, we have 400 students extra. Like they receive special permission to go to our school. So we got teachers that have classrooms that like 40 students. Like in my PE classes, I have 60 students in my PE class. You know, it takes me forever to take roll. And then don't let we have like 5 teachers positions that hadn't filled. So, you know, whenever a position don't fill and they can't find a sub, guess where they drop them? The gym. So then I'll be in the gym with like 3 or 4 classes, over 200 students by myself, you know, and how can you basically social distance? I mean, it's just school is turned into a babysitting service now, you know, and that's basically what it is. It's a business. They're only concerned about the money coming in. They're not distributing the money to the appropriate places where it needs to go. So, I mean, you know, a lot of school districts, they depend on the ignorance of parents, and they depend on the fear of teachers not to call them to the carpet when they do wrong things. And back to the gentleman's question about homelessness. Yes, there's a lot of homelessness going on right now because a lot of parents during the pandemic, they lost their jobs. So kids are sleeping in vans with their parents. They had to move back in with their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, their great aunts. And, you know, and it's just like Curry said, you know, kids' focus now is really not on education. It's about surviving day to day and making it to the next day. So, you know, until we fix that, education is going to always suffer. You know, it's like a social problem, and these legislators, they're the ones that have the power to fix it. You know, as a state superintendent, we would basically just have to go along and do what they tell us that needs to be done. Like we can give suggestions, but we wouldn't have any power or control about what goes on in these local school districts because the superintendent and the school board are the ones that set policy. Only thing that a state superintendent can do is like give recommendations and be like, well, you shouldn't do that or I wouldn't do that, but they have the right to do what they feel locally.
So let's talk about the role of the state superintendent. Like, so they don't have the power that we believe.
You basically enforce the laws that the Department of Education have in place. That's basically your job, to enforce the laws of the Department of Education.
Well, you have an important role, which is you have the money and you can write grants to do things that you think are important to do for schools to make those kinds of changes. And you can stand up and say things and you can ask and fight for legislation. I think there's a lot that folks in this role, the superintendent, could do. It hasn't really been something like right now, the superintendent hasn't stood up to say, teachers, let's let teachers teach instead of trying to control what they can teach. Let's let them teach the truth. He could do that. He hasn't done that, the current superintendent. I think there's definitely a role to be played here. I agree it's not as powerful as it could have been because it splits its power with the Board of Education, the state superintendent. But if we work with that Board of Education, you can still do a lot as well, I think. And it might be a little bit difficult for a Democrat because most of the folks on there were appointed by Republican governors. But I think there's definitely common ground. Probably everyone will agree that we can, you know, improve the lives for teachers and get more teachers in place, recruit more teachers, improve quality of education in Georgia. Like there's going to be a lot of things we can work together on. So I think that we can get a lot more done, but we're going to have to work pretty hard to do it.
Wow. Like, because for some, you know, when you think about the state school superintendent, it's like, I feel like you have power over
everybody. Yeah.
Yes, every county. Like you get to dictate how policy is enacted, like, but you really don't. The county parties is where the power actually lies. I mean, the county school board, I'm sorry, is where the power actually lies, right?
Yes, and one way we can fix that is that you know, they don't allow teachers on the school board. You know, most most school districts that have a policy where if you're employed by the district, you can't be on the school board. But I feel that every school board needs at least 1 or 2 teachers on the school board, because you have people on the school board creating policy and creating agendas and setting agendas, and they don't understand. So I feel like every school board needs at least 1 teacher, if not 2, so they can bring their perspective of what's going on in the school. Because, again, you have people on the school board that they didn't major in education. They've never been a teacher. Some of them possibly never went to college, so they really don't have a clear understanding of what's going on, especially in the rural areas. Basically you're voted to the school board based on how popular you are in the community, not based on the knowledge that you have. So, that's one way we can combat that, by having teachers on the school board, at least 1, possibly 2. That would be a good thing.
Mara, I think that there is still a lot of position, especially with where the money goes. The Department of Education has the money, and money is, in my opinion, money is definitely, when it comes to schools, has a lot to do with the power, that because you get to fund, like I was saying, you can provide the funding for different things that you think are going to be appropriate in the schools. So definitely there is still power in that position, and you're right, you could anyway. We haven't rewritten our policies and regulations that are the Board of Education policies, but we could. We haven't, that hasn't been done since the 80s either. We have a lot of policies that have been around for a long time and not updated, even when they maybe should be. You could do that. We could update policies. We could hopefully anyway soften the blows of some laws that are coming down the pipeline, it looks like ones that are going to try to control teachers more. Like, teachers don't need more control. They don't need more people telling them what they can and can't do. They need less of that. So I believe that the state superintendent can work on policies that would soften the blows of some of these laws and call for changes to the laws that are coming, like the ones about not teaching divisive concepts, which basically means you just can't have history class, or you can't have a debate or talk about current events. I know that's not what proponents of the law are saying it does, but it will definitely do that. It will chill students, and teachers from talking about any kind of important issue that's in front of them. And because teachers won't want their schools to get in trouble, and they won't want to be possibly losing their jobs for saying something in class that, could be seen as divisive. So they're going to avoid doing anything like that. So I think the state superintendent can also speak up more. I don't know that anyone's heard the state superintendent say a lot. I think there is power in having a voice and giving voice to others. Because like Mr. Morrow just said, we can give more voice to teachers across the state by having them on school boards, having them in other important positions in the state. I would definitely listen to them right now. I listen to teachers. I have a lot of teachers on my advisory committee, and I'm making a survey to try to ask them more about what they want. And of course, I have a lot of friends and family who are teachers, so I'm hearing from them all the time about some of these same issues. And I think that the superintendent can do more than we think the position has been doing. We can do more.
So what I think I'm hearing about this role of the school superintendent is more of an advocate for the teachers, for the students in legislature. Is that kind of like a basic definition of the school superintendent?
Yeah, basically he meets with the governor, he meets with state senators, legislators, and tell them that this is what's going on, and then they come together and they vote on it and decide whether what he's saying is valid or but a lot of times they don't listen. But like she said, even with I watched Richard Wood's interview with 11 Live, and the lady was like, you notoriously stay under the radar. Like, when this lady, Kathy Cox, was the state superintendent, she was a former teacher. She would come visit schools. She would talk to students. She would make herself available. Like with this guy, you never hear from him until election time. So, that's one thing. And then as far as John Barnes, because I just recently had my interview with 11 Live earlier this morning, and they asked me about him. And I was like, well, I wouldn't vote for him because he had the position and he resigned to run for governor. So he left the teachers and the students of Georgia hanging. So why should we put him back in office when he had the position and he resigned from it? So, it's just, both of those, Barnes was in office and then he resigned, and then Richard Woods took over, and he's been there 8 years, and he's asking for another 4 years, which would give him 12. And no, no, no.
This is why you run.
Yes, that's because they were in education, but they haven't been a classroom teacher for over 20 years, so they don't understand what's going on. Teachers are physically, mentally, emotionally, and verbally abused on a daily basis, And it seems like nobody cares. Nobody's listening. And that's why a lot of teachers are walking away from this profession daily. I mean, who wants to go to work and you hear a kid tell you to shut the F up, get the F out of your face, calling you a B word, and you send them to the office, and they send them right back. It was a gentleman that came out of retirement, had like 40 years, came out of retirement just trying to help. Kid told him to shut the F up. He sent the kid to the office. They sent the kid right back. The kid said, "You thought I was about to get in trouble, huh?" The teacher packed up his bag and left the kids in there by themselves, just walked away. And then the school district wants to take action against his license, as far as like he can't teach, suspend him for 3 or 4 years. But I mean, like, who wants to stay at a job where you're constantly abused? I mean, yeah, it's school and it's kids, but something has to be done about that right there. But, I was shocked because his room was right next door to me at that time. He packed up his stuff and left. And left the kids in the room by themselves.
So let me ask y'all about CRT, because that's a hot issue. Where do you stand, Kerry and James?
I'll let Kerry go first.
First of all, thank you. I think we all know that critical theory is not being taught in K through 12 classrooms in Georgia. It's probably mostly in law school that you would encounter critical race theory. But I do think it's important to be able to talk about race and issues and history and LGBTQ issues and like all issues, history of those issues and those peoples. It's important to themselves in their history and what they're learning, and to know like that they could be a part of this as well and are an important part of our country. I don't want ever to block out any kind of issue that might be divisive, because that's often what makes us American, honestly. Like, we're divisive and yet we figure it out. It might take us a while sometimes. Like right now, we're still struggling, I think anyway, right now. One thing that's happening, and the reason that people want to ban divisive topics and talking about race and anything like that in the class, because it feels like folks want to try to maintain a system of white supremacy. Education could definitely tear that down if we kids not critical race theory, but critical thinking skills. Teach them how to analyze knowledge that's coming to them, to figure out like where it's coming from, who's saying it, like, is this something I should believe or not believe, and what steps can I do to make the world a better place, to make things more equitable for everyone around me. Like, that's what we should be teaching kids, how to care about themselves and their communities and others, and think critically about those things and how to make things better. And that will take learning an accurate history and learning about all of these divisive topics. In fact, I think that's exactly what we should be learning about. Now, I did things like debate in high school. And so I think it was important to learn about those exact divisive topics and be able to discuss them with other folks and take either side of those topics and know about them, the ins and the outs. And that's exactly what makes people better thinkers. And if we do that, we'll be able to tackle more effectively a system of white supremacy that is in place in Georgia. But it also includes stopping the school to prison pipeline however we can, to make sure all kids are educated.
Mr. Morrow.
Well, I've taught AP United States history, and in that course, we discussed the Miller Passage, we discussed African populations, slavery during the Revolutionary War, 3-5 Compromise, KKK, Jim Crow, NAACP, Black Codes. All of these things are discussed in school, but I would just say it depends on the tone of the teacher and how you deliver it. Like, at no time should any race of our children feel guilty or feel like, they did something wrong based on their ancestors. But racism has always been recognized as a feature of American society. And many people feel like if you talk about CRT, then you're like anti-American and you're basically villainizing white society. And that's really not the case. But as far as it being taught, I mean, kids are going to learn about it regardless, whether it's taught in schools or not. But I just feel like it's your tone. And again, should no racial children feel like they're inferior or that should not be taught. But at the same time, we still need to understand what went on during history, like in history during that time period. Because if you think about what's going on today as far as how police officers police Black society, I've been stopped twice. I got pulled over in Tupelo, Mississippi. The officer, where you going? Made me get out of the car. And I was like, what you stopped me for? And he was like, inappropriate lane change without a signal. And I was like, well, that warrants me getting out of the car. So he made me get out of the car and put my hands on the back of the hood, and they searched my car. And then another time I got pulled over in Jasper, Alabama. And basically the same thing happened. So it's like, it makes me wonder, is it just because I'm a black man that I have to deal with this? Like, you know, I don't know. When you run with police, when they run your license, everything comes up about you, whether you've been in jail or you've been arrested for drugs, anything. My record is spotless. So, you know, with my record being spotless, and I'm 47 years old, here's a black man that's never been to jail, no misdemeanors or felonies, and you're making me step out of the car. You know, and of course that would make a person feel nervous, especially, you know, every time you look up on the news, a black male is being beaten or shot by the police officer. A lot of friends tell me whenever the lights come on, their anxiety goes through the roof because they don't know what's going to happen to them. So, you know, race is a problem, but I don't know, school-wise, like I said, the kids are going to learn about it, but, you know, teachers don't necessarily have to teach it, but some of the things are covered, but it just depends on how you deliver it to the students.
Yeah. I think we should respect teachers and let them teach how they know they can teach it appropriately for the age level, of course. I'm looking at the comments. I see Mr. Reed is saying we need to revamp our curriculum and really focus on a strong civics class. And I'm exactly correct. That'd definitely be a great way to improve our society. And let's see what else. There was something else. Oh, again, Mr. Reed talking about social workers. And that's exactly what I'm saying. We need more social work, more therapists, anything to get people the right services in Georgia. And Miss Monique Worthley saying that reparations would help with this. And I think you're right. I think if families had more stability, and that would help a lot of families if there were reparations in place and universal housing in place, those kinds of things, then our schools would do a lot better.
Yeah, generational wealth. That's one thing that occurred. You know, with people in white society, a lot of their families became wealthy off of slavery. You know, and you know, as far as black society, we haven't received proper reparations for the things that we've done. So, you know, race inequality has continued. You know, so I mean, I don't know how we're going to fix it, but that's one thing that needs to be fixed as well, because certain races of people are going to continue to lag behind until they have the means and the needs to better themselves.
Yeah. There's also intergenerational trauma, like you were talking about, families and children maybe not, you know, doing really the right way to do things, or, you know, interacting appropriately with teachers, and it's partially because of that. Like, this is what people are coming from. It's not just the trauma of today and the pandemic, but intergenerational trauma that's long-term. And it's more than just from slavery. And you all know this, but it's also from redlining and other huge amounts of discrimination that have occurred throughout our history.
I mean, you can just look at the questions that the Judicial Committee was asking the Supreme Court Justice. You know, they were grilling her and giving her a hard time about things that really didn't have anything to do with her. But they just wanted to try to embarrass her and make her look bad. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, she did such a great job. But yeah, of course she's.
Yeah, that's an example right there.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't have felt the same way if she had reacted the way other justices have reacted under that kind of question. But she didn't. She was amazing.
She stayed calm.
She certainly.
See, this is what I believe campaigning should be. You know, we have these conversations. We're all on the same team. You know, we're running as Democrats here in Georgia. We're on the same team. You know, one of us, one of you, somebody is going to come to the forefront. But this is where we win, and we win together, because it's obvious to me that both of you, your hearts are there for these children. Your hearts are there with these educators. Like, your heart is there. And this is, to me, what it means. This is what the Democratic Party, this is what I want them to see. I want them to see us do this together. You know, we're running, but we're not running against each other. You're running for the children of Georgia. You're running for these educators. You're running for, we're all headed in the right direction. So that's why I was delighted that you guys, accepted the invitation to come and have conversations with each other about what is best for Georgia and what your administration could look like. So go there. Tell us what it would look like if you were the school superintendent? What is it? What's your vision for Georgia?
So I'd have a lot of things I would do a little differently. First of all, like I have said, I would definitely stand up for students and for teachers over and over again. Instead of just sitting back, I would stand up and fight for them, not just for giving them a bonus every now and then, but for pay that makes them paid as other professionals who have similar education levels to them, like including folks who are attorneys, like for example, like they have similar education levels. And I would go to bat for them having more autonomy in their classrooms and less of the busy work, because I know teachers have, and I did when I was a teacher, and a lot of my friends also still complain about this, a lot of things to do that aren't really part of teaching. I would want to hire people to come if those things need to be done. We need to hire people to come help teachers do those things. Like if we need to collect data that teachers are trying to teach and plan lessons and, of course, deal with students and figure out what their issues are, then we need to get more people in that classroom. So I would work to give funding to more people at the schools, more adults at the schools who can help in various ways. Would work on hiring teachers, teacher retention, recruiting teachers, training teachers to do the things that they're required to do already, and to stay safer in the schools, and to work on preventing violence and issues. So there's going to be a lot of changes, and it would start with funding. I think that's what, like we talked about, that's what the superintendent can do. The superintendent can put out plans and ideas, like things that are going to be best practice. I'm going to put out everything I can about all the research-based and evidence-based things that are working in schools to actually reduce violence and to help behavior of students and protect teachers. Put out all that we can find. And right now, what I'm looking at is community school strategies seem to be really helpful in that arena. We don't have a lot of community schools in Georgia, and in fact, I'm not sure there are any, but there are several across the country. And that has improved a lot of things about schools. I'm hoping to look into that more heavily and fund that as a superintendent of schools, and also to try to make students feel safe. Because sometimes I know I've heard from Mr. Morrow that teachers don't feel safe, but some students also don't feel safe. I want to make sure that we're teaching everybody at the school to care for and respect other students and their teachers, but also providing them with what they need. So with huge increases to funding for social workers and any kind of help for mental health for teachers and students to help them, not just with the pandemic, but everything else. And I would also fight for, as much as I could, and I think probably I could, fight for universal housing, because I do think that would support schools more than anything else. If children were all in stable housing and didn't have to worry about where they were going to sleep at night, that would mean they were ready for education if we also met their other needs, of course. And I would work with Georgia Legal Services and Legal Aid until we could get some kind of universal housing in place, because they can help keep kids and families in their homes. That's one thing I've done as an attorney, help keep families in their homes. I'm definitely willing to talk more about that if you want to hear it, but that's something that I think I have an expertise in as well. And I've also got expertise in working with Department of Labor and departments, because as an attorney at Legal Aid and Georgia Legal Services, you do a lot of kinds of cases, including unemployment cases and housing cases. And I have a lot of familiarity with different types of cases and what I think we could do to support people forward in their families and the communities as part of the school system. So I'd want to make the school be a real hub for everything in the community so that families can get that help there. Doesn't mean the school has to run everything, but the school would be a housing, a place for those things to be. And we'd partner with lots of different groups to make sure families could get what they needed. I'd also want to look at this way school discipline is done in Georgia, and would want to do rewrite the policies on that and try to help everyone. Because I don't think teachers are really empowered to say what they want to say in school discipline or in individualized education program meetings. I think they have to say what the school tells them to say. But I want them to be empowered to actually speak up for themselves as well, and for the students in those meetings and those hearings. There's so many other things, but looking at that funding formula is something I'd want to try to get the legislature to do as well. So go ahead. I know I don't have too much longer, so I'll let Mr. Morrow.
Real quick, before you, Carrie, tell me what community schools, what is that? Because I've never heard of that here in Georgia.
It's a strategy. It's a strategy of how to, like I was saying, basically provide everything in the school building to communities, to make the school be a focal point of the community. And I think that's one problem in Georgia, because we've had schools get bigger and bigger and bigger because of lots of decisions of school boards and school systems. And they didn't intend to come to where we are now with like huge schools and not enough teachers in them, and schools that are further away from your community is, where you intend. I think that we need to try to pull it back and have more community schools. It basically means exactly what it says. It's in your community, and it's where you can do a lot of things. Like there could be clinics there can be legal services there could be everything happening in the school, after hours, even and I also think we need to provide more good quality childcare. Like Mr. Morrow said earlier, schools are not your childcare, and they shouldn't be. I agree. That's not what schools are. Of course, we do need schools to be open during the day. That is when parents work. Not because of childcare reasons, it's because we need kids to learn during the day. That's a good time to do it. But we also need childcare that's going to be free or very low cost for families. And that would happen also at a community school. So basically serving the needs of the community, including mental health needs, is what the school can do, because kids are mandated to be there. So they have this, captive audience. We need to help that captive audience as much as we possibly can across the system. So I'd do as much as I could to get funding for that it's a strategy, basically, Tamara. And you have to work with the school boards and the state to get all schools on board to use that strategy. But if we can see that it's working, then that's something that I think we can get other schools to emulate. And I would also want to look at that, look across the state and find school systems that what they're doing is working, and try to get other school systems to look at that and try to figure out how we can do that in their areas as well.
Mr. Morrow, what does it look like for you? If you were,
all right, well, if I'm the next state superintendent, then I'll probably hire Curry as my legal representation for the office. But I would want to see teachers happy. Teachers should not have to come to work angry and upset and leave angry and upset. And by me being a teacher, I see it all the time. They don't feel like they're receiving the support that they should from the school district, from their administrators. I mean, not only are teachers having to deal with extra work piled up on them, but normally when you have your planning period is supposed to be the time where you can grade papers in grades, but instead they're calling you to grade level meetings, content meetings. I mean, all type of meetings, and a lot of these things like professional development, it really doesn't work in the classroom because the people that's presenting it to you, they've never been a classroom teacher. So I always have a problem with going to professional developments that people give us are people that have never been a classroom teacher, because they don't understand the discipline problems and the issues. Another thing that I would want to fix is teachers that are being discriminated and blackballed against by their administrator based on how they feel about them instead of their performance as a teacher. And I'll give you an example. I was at Sylvan Hills, and I told my principal, I said, I'm not feeling middle school anymore. These kids off the chain. But 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is something else. But anyway, I'm not feeling middle school anymore. I'm going to go to Thurl High School and coach. Boy, she got so upset. She was, oh, no, I can't let you leave, Coach Morrow. You're one of my shining stars. So I really didn't pay any attention to it. I just brushed it off. And then the next day, she came and did my formal evaluation. I'm sure Carrie is familiar with formal evaluations. She came and did my formal evaluation. It's only 14 slots on the evaluation. At the time, I've been teaching 11 years, and I never received one NI. That's a need improvement based on the area or whatever. This lady gave me 11 needs improvement and tried to force me to sign a professional development plan, which would keep me from transferring, all because she didn't want me to leave. I didn't do anything wrong, and she did that to me. And I ended up resigning and taking like a $15,000 pay cut to go to Clayton County, because at the time I felt like my happiness was more important than money. So teachers shouldn't have to deal with administrators that do things like that. And those are the things that school districts hide, and they're not transparent with. A lot of teachers, if you was to do a hotline about how they're treated by their administrators, I'm sure you would probably have hundreds of teachers to call and tell you that it's really not the kids all the time. Normally it's the administrator, because they're basically upset with that teacher because they might have stood up in a faculty meeting and asked a question that the administrator couldn't answer, and it embarrassed them. So now they got to get back at them. So these are the things that bothers me, because, I hear it all the time. My administrator gave me a bad evaluation basically because I asked them a question in front of another teacher and they couldn't answer it, and they felt embarrassed by it. So I want to stop that, because I feel like if an administrator is doing that, you don't deserve to be an administrator, and you need to go back in the classroom and try again. All right. Now, as far as the discipline, we got to do something. And I don't want to lock kids up, but maybe, we have a lot of vacant schools around that have shut down and schools have consolidated. Maybe we can provide funding and we open these schools and have a place for these kids to have behavior issues. But I would want to have anger management classes. Teachers need mental health, like somebody to come talk to them, because a lot of teachers have mental breakdowns because they're really not strong enough to deal with what's going on. And then some of the teachers, the pay, like a first year teacher, they might make $2,400 a month, but their rent is like $1,800 a month. So now they only got $600 to live off of, and either they get a roommate, or one teacher said that she's in a relationship with somebody that she really don't want to be with, but she can't afford to leave him because she wouldn't be able to pay her bills. So, you know, I mean, that's bad, you know, for you to stay in a relationship with someone because you can't pay your bills. But I just don't know the money, or you have to stay at home. Like, teachers are the lowest paid and least respected profession. And I just want to bring to light what's really going on, bring transparency to what because school districts cover up a lot of things. You know, a kid, he brought a gun to my school and he shot it in the ceiling in the cafeteria. Now, in my opinion, he should have never been there because he was on probation for strong arm robbery. Now, if you're on probation for a serious crime like that, then you shouldn't be allowed to be in a regular classroom setting. You need to go straight to an alternative school setting until your behavior improves, and then maybe you'll have an opportunity. But I just didn't feel like a kid that was on probation for strong arm robbery should be in a regular classroom setting, and then you gave him a chance, and what does he do? He brings a gun to school, and it goes off in the cafeteria and puts a hole in the ceiling. You know, somebody could have got shot. So I just feel that's a problem. We need metal detectors at all entrances. You know, wherever entrance the kids come in through, you know, they need to have metal detectors for them. A lot of times they do random school searches and the line be all the way to the street, almost a half a mile long. So if I'm a kid and I'm pulling up and I see this and I got something illegal on me, then of course I'm not going to get out of my car and get in line. So, you know, I would recommend that they allow the kids to come in, and once they set their bags down, you know, they come through with the dogs and, you know, sniff or whatever. We got to take drastic measures if we want to fix what's going on as far as how teachers are being treated, their pay, the discipline of students. I mean, like Curry was saying, you have some students that are so nice and so sweet, and the bullies jump on them and beat them up, and if they defend themselves, they end up getting the same punishment that the kid received, and that kid instigated and provoked the whole situation. And one kid was just trying to defend themselves and make sure they didn't get beat up so bad and get sent to the hospital, you know, because I don't break up fights. You know, my administrators, they're like, Mr. Mark, I'm 6'6", 230 pounds. I would hurt a kid. So I don't break up fights. You know, a lot of times parents will be like, they'll see the video of a teacher, they be like, well, why do you intervene? I'm like, because I don't want to hurt a kid, because if I do, then I could lose my job. So, you know, and I feel like police officers and security officers, since we have those should be the ones that break up the fights. And when we have discipline problems like that, not a teacher. If I wanted to do that, then I would have went to the police academy or when they got security training. So, you know, I'm just saying, teachers shouldn't have to break up fights and risk getting hit, because when I used to break them up, I get hit in the face, hit in the back of the head, kicked. So, you know, I mean, it's just teachers shouldn't have to deal with that. So I would be the person, I would be the advocate for teachers, like Curry was saying. Hey, if a teacher come to me and tell me that this is what happened to me, I would listen to them. A lot of times I've written Richard Woods at least 3 or 4 times. He didn't even bother to respond to me. So, you know, that's one reason why I want to get at him too.
Well, I just want to say, we're at the top of the hour. I just want to say thank you for running. I know how much of an undertaking this is. I know, you know, I know where your hearts are, because you don't do this just because. So I just want to say thank you for running and your willingness to serve and to take care of our children here in the great state of Georgia. So I want to thank you both, James Morrow and Ms. Curry Hitchens, for being my guest today. Conversations with candidates, Georgia candidates. We're going to have it's a ongoing series from now through Election Day. Election Day is May 24th. Curry and James, before we go, please tell people how they can reach you, how they can donate, and how they can support you.
Great. You can go to my website. It has all my contact information. It's curryhitchens.com. It's curryhitchens.com. It's just both my names, but they're both kind of hard to spell, so I spelled them for you. But hopefully you can come down to my website. You can donate there. You can contact me there. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
For me, I have a website on Facebook. It's called Vote Morrow for a Better Tomorrow. So you can meet me, or you can contact me on that website, or you can contact me with Nicholas, Nicholas, Morrow 1, the number 1 at gmail.com. And I'll respond to anybody that sends me any questions.
Awesome. Thank you for running, and happy campaigning, y'all.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, Curry. Have a good day.
Nice to meet you, sir. Bye, Tamara.
Have a good one, everybody. Thank you. And we'll be back next week. Have a good one, everybody.
When we come to Washington in this campaign, we're coming to get our check. Young prodigies. Grow. Free. Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
Kicking the door, coming for our 40 acres and more. Our 6.4 trillion. Miss that no, we fought the Civil War. We came from the poor.
Start from the bottom, we still on the floor. We pray to the Lord.
Amen.
Picking the cotton, our fingers are sore.
Straight out the underground, escaping from slavery. The only cemeteries that we had were the trees. Watching our bodies while they grew in the breeze. Thinking to the north side to get free.
That way came from slavery. Where's all the marijuana shit on me? Put her head on the door, but the world won't scheme. Stick to the north side to get free.
Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
We taking them back, putting Pettis Bridge on the map. Police came with the strap. That Sunday was buddy, no cap.
Stop capping.
Speaking of cap,
Kaepernick taking knees at the flag, where my justice at. We built this nation, better give me them racks. All fact, just imagine a little bit of gasoline. 4 girls got bombed back in 63.
400 years, yeah, we still ain't free. Our rise, we rise, taking it.
Kaepernick. Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me.
Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
We stuck in the trap, with no shoes, trying to pull up bootstraps. Increasing the gap, wealth got bigger, so we had to adapt. Discriminated cause we black, I know it worth more than I know it's a fact. They tryna feed scraps, strike me on board so we can't come back.
30 years ago on April 19, you said and try Remy chemical read.
If it happened to them, think it happened to me. Screaming